Good afternoon and welcome. This is Debbie Oldham from Governance Services. Under Agenda Item 1, Councillor Abigail Marshall-Catung was nominated as Chair prior to the start of this meeting. Are all members agreeable? Yes, they are nodding. Thank you. So thank you. Councillor Marshall-Catung is now formally elected as Chair to this meeting. Thank you. So Councillor Marshall-Catung.
Sorry, my system has just frozen.
Oh, you're back with us, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this remote hearing of the Licensing Subcommittee. My name is Councillor Marshall-Catung, and I will be chairing today's hearing. Before I proceed further, could I remind everyone that today's meeting is being streamed live on the City Council's YouTube channel. Could I ask the following members of the subcommittee to kindly introduce themselves? Councillor Latty.
Hello, I'm Councillor Latty for Gaisley and Rawdon Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Yes, Councillor Neil Buckley, Woodley Ward.
Thank you, councillors. I would like to start the hearing today by confirming that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee meets the requirements of the Council's Constitution, even though members of the panel are in remote attendance. While items today will be fully discussed as is usual, remote attendance requires a few slight changes as to how I will manage the debate. Therefore, could all attendees mute their microphones unless I invite them to speak? This will avoid disruption from any background noise. Can all participants please keep their cameras on during the hearing? All participants will be invited to introduce themselves at the start of the hearing to make it clear to public observers who will be involved in the proceedings. I ask for your assistance and for your patience while I go through this process. Could I now invite officers to introduce themselves and mute your microphone once you've introduced yourself, and I will start with Rob.
Hello, I'm Robert Brown. I'm a solicitor in Leeds City Council's Legal Services, and I'm the legal advisor to the subcommittee this afternoon.
Thank you, Rob. Matthew?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matthew Nelson from Entertainment Licensing, and today I'm supported by Samantha Longfellow-Pennicott. Thank you.
Many thanks, Matthew. Debbie?
Thank you, Chair. Debbie Oldham from Governance Services, and I'm clerking the meeting today.
Thank you, Debbie. Could I ask the applicant or the representative to please introduce yourselves? And I'll start with Sue.
Hello everybody, my name is Sue Ward and I'm the Operations Director at Leeds Cricket, Football and Athletic Company Limited.
Thank you very much. Have we got John Hill?
No, John's not with us today.
Okay, Sean? No? Stephanie?
Yeah, Sean Jones, Head of Customer Experience for Leeds Rhinos.
Thank you very much. Have we got Stephanie Wright?
Yeah, Stephanie Wright, Facilities Manager for Leeds Rhinos.
Excellent, thank you. Could I now ask the objector to the application as well, please, to introduce themselves?
I think that's me. Hi, I'm Richard Parr. I live near the Rugby Sand.
Excellent, thank you. Have we got any other objectors in?
No, we haven't, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Could I ask the clerk to kindly go through the agendas 2 to 5, please?
Thank you. So under Agenda Item 2, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Agenda Item 3, there's no exempt information on this agenda. Agenda Item 4, there are no late items that I'm aware of. However, supplementary information in the form of additional representation has been submitted, and this has been sent to all parties and published onto the Council's website alongside the agenda. Agenda Item 5, could I ask members if they have any disclosable pecuniary interests? I'll take silence as confirmation that there are none. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, straight to agenda item number 6. Today's application is to vary a premises license held by Rugby Pitch North South and Extension Stands Emerald Headingley Stadium, St Michael's Lane in Headingley, Leeds, LS6 3BR. Could I ask the legal advisor to the subcommittee to kindly outline the procedures for today's hearing?
Thank you, Chair. Our usual procedure for this type of application is that the applicant addresses the committee first, and then any other parties who've indicated an intention to speak at the hearing will then address the committee. And then the applicant has the chance to respond to anything said by the other parties. In making its decision, the subcommittee will consider what's appropriate and proportionate to promote the licensing objectives, namely the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. In terms of time limits, the regulations permit the subcommittee to set a time limit on presentations, providing the same time limit is applied to all parties. The usual time limit applied is 15 minutes per party, and the applicant may wish to split their allocation between their initial presentation and their response to the other parties. For example, 10 minutes initially and then 5 minutes at the end. Can I ask the applicant's representative and the other party present whether they would like to ask the committee for longer than a total of 15 minutes for their submissions? Ms. Ward, perhaps first.
No, we don't need longer than 15 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Parr?
No, I think that will do the trick. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So in that case, a time limit of 15 minutes will apply to all presentations. After each presentation, the subcommittee members may wish to ask questions. The time for questions to be asked and answered is in addition to the time limit set for presentations. I should actually perhaps also ask Ms. Ward, do you intend to split your time in any particular way? Do you want to have a 10 minutes followed by 5 minutes, or do you want to just see how you go?
I think we'll see how we go, but probably 10 and 5 would work very well.
Okay, thank you. Please note we do not permit cross-examination in subcommittee. If any party feels there is a crucial question that needs to be asked and answered, please do not ask the person directly, but instead make a request to the chair, who will then determine whether or not the question should be put. Parties may request permission to call witnesses. Can I ask if any party wishes to call a witness today? Ms. Ward?
I think that will depend on the questioning. I may call on Sian or Stephanie at some point.
Mr. Parr? Sorry, you're on mute.
No, I think that's fine.
Thank you. All documents that have been submitted have been copied and circulated to the subcommittee in advance. Can I just confirm that we all have the same original pack, which consists of pages numbered to 73, I think, together with a 4-page supplementary pack? Thank you. It would be helpful when referring to documents to identify which document you're referring to by its bundle page number. Additional documents may now only be tabled with the consent of all the parties. Does anyone have any additional documents that they wish to be considered today?
No.
Thank you. Please note your presentation is your only opportunity to address the subcommittee, so you need to make sure that you've included in your presentation everything that you wish to say and to have taken into account. After the parties have made their presentations and after any questions, members will consider whether they have all the information they require to make a decision. Once this point is reached, members of the committee will go into a private session. If members have any additional questions to ask, they will return to the meeting to ask those questions. They'll then return to private session to make their decision. Can all parties please remain in the meeting until they're asked to leave? All the parties will be informed once the hearing has ended and will be advised of the decision in writing within 5 working days of today. Can I just ask if there are any questions or representations about the procedure which we propose to follow today? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Officer. Could the licensing officer now present the application, please?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Chair. So members today are asked to consider an application to vary a premise licence made by Leeds Cricket, Football and Athletic Company Limited for Rugby Pitch, North, South and Extension Stands, Emerald Headingley Stadium, St Michael's Lane, Leeds, LS6. The variation sought is to enable live music events to be hosted over 2 weekends each year and to effectively double the number of allowed spectators from the current limit of 9,999 to 19,999. The number of live music events currently permitted by the licence is 1 event per year, either on a Friday or a Saturday from 12 noon until 11 p.m. and up to 9,999 spectators. And then 1 event either on a Saturday or a Sunday from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. up to a maximum of 4,999 spectators. Further details on the operating schedule can be seen in a copy of the current premise licence, which is attached to Appendix A on page 11 of the report. Excuse me. So a copy of the application to vary licence can be found on page 25 of the report at Appendix B. On page 40, Appendix C is a copy of the pro forma risk assessment, which identifies the steps the applicant is willing to take to promote the licensing objectives. The application has not attracted any representations from responsible authorities. It has, however, attracted a total of 10 representations from local residents and the Residents Association. All of these primarily centre on the grounds of public nuisance. Redacted copies of these representations are included at Appendix E, starting on page 61 of the report. It should also be noted that included as a late item is a representation that's already included in the agenda pack, so it's not in addition to the 10 representations previously referred to. However, the reason for this inclusion is due to the objector providing the photograph with their representation showing the direction of noise travel which was originally omitted from the agenda. And that, Chair, is the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I now invite the applicant to present their case? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. To give you some background, Leeds Cricket, Football and Athletic Company Limited, the club, wish to vary premises licence 04367 by increasing the performance of live music events to a maximum of 4 live events over 2 weekends each year, attracting no more than 19,999 spectators at each event. There is no increase in the hours we wish to operate. The application is, as Matthew has just explained, and the steps that we've taken to promote the licensing objective. Emerald Headingley Stadium is a sports ground requiring a general safety certificate under the Safety of Sports Grounds Act 1975. All outdoor events will adopt the same facility standards and conditions as required by all rugby fixtures to promote the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. I feel we have clearly set out in section M of the application steps we intend to take to promote the 4 licensing objectives. A pro forma risk assessment for outdoor events, a V2, has been completed and the appropriate codes from the risk assessment are utilised within the application. Responsible authorities, including West Yorkshire Police and the Environmental Health, have not indicated any objections to the application. In fact, Vanessa Holdroyd, Senior Environmental Health Officer, Leeds City Council, has confirmed that there are no outstanding complaints regarding public nuisance and that it hasn't been for 18 months. I'd just like to advise this excludes the last 6 months where we play games behind closed doors. Feedback. We feel we have learnt and acted upon the feedback provided by the Sub-Licensing Committee at the last hearing as contained within the Notice of Decision dated the 19th of August 2019. We've continued to liaise and engage with the residents and the ward councillors via our newsletter, advising of fixtures, events and plans. I personally wrote to all those who previously objected to the original application and advise them of our intentions, offering a face-to-face meeting should they have any questions or concerns. The majority didn't respond, however, Den Shulman and Derek Cochrane accepted the invitation and brought along some of their neighbours, including Richard Parr, who's with us today, to a meeting that was held on the 12th of February. We will, of course, continue to work with the residents regarding the topics raised at this meeting. I'd like just to mention the representations. A total of 10 representations have been received in connection with this application. A consistent theme with all representations are the concerns relating public nuisance. We believe we have provided evidence and the information to the Entertainment Licence Department to contain the topics raised. However, to summarise, an event plan with the app will be created and circulated 90 days before any live event occurs. And this will contain at least a noise management strategy, a litter and waste management strategy, a travel and transport strategy, major incident and emergency planning, and crowd and capacity management. An independent noise consultant to assess the position of all sound sources pre-event and to monitor noise throughout the event will be present at all outdoor events. We contracted Joint Nash at our last event and positioned consultants in the turnways, on St Michael's Lane, Grey Shields Avenue and Broomfield Crescent. A noise compliance report was produced and circulated to the Leeds City Council Safety Advisory Group in September 2019. To date, we haven't received any adverse feedback. We are most mindful of the residents in the local area and will adopt a policy consistent with existing procedures to minimise noise and light disruption. Floodlights will be turned off by 11 p.m. and no bottle bins or waste will be emptied or collected until the next day. The Western Terrace, which is the closest stand to noise-sensitive premises, will not be used and is excluded from the premises licence application. We will advertise and operate an attended, complete telephone number for the use during the live event through which noise complaints can be channelled. The feedback will be given to the sound engineers immediately to judge whether or not adjustments to the level of music are required. As with all previous applications, the club stresses its intention to work with the residents rather than antagonise them in any way. As included in the newsletters and the stadium liaison group meetings, if the residents have any concerns, including those associated with regulated activities, then they should always, in the first instance, contact the club. I'd just like to work through some key facts, because some of the information within the representations is speculation and out of our control. And I think it is important that the subcommittee concentrates on key facts. There will be no increase to spectator levels. These will be brought in line with rugby events. Pre-COVID-19, the number of sporting events that were proposed for 2020 was only 61. Last year we hosted 71 and the year before 68. Even with the addition of 4 live music events, this is still extremely low for such an iconic venue in the city of Leeds. These figures include rugby union events that attract less than 500 spectators and domestic cricket events that attract less than 2,000 spectators. These figures were based on scheduled events before the impact of COVID-19, so the figures are greater than what we actually have staged this year. The rugby stadium has a capacity of 19,500, which decreased from 20,500 post-redevelopment. We will continue to adhere to all the previous conditions contained within the premises licence 04367, and when an artist has been found, an event plan will be produced and made available to the responsible authorities, including the local authority, no later than 90 days before an event. A noise management strategy will be written and an independent noise consultant contracted to be present throughout the duration of the live music event. We have not received any adverse feedback from Environmental Health Service for over 18 months. This again excludes the last 6 months. The Leeds City Council Safety Advisory Group have not reported any adverse feedback following the event stage on the 21st of September 2019. The post-event documents forward to Leeds City Council Safety Advisory Group, including a noise report from Joint Nash. The notice of decision which granted premises licence 04367 advised that should the club's event go successfully, and should we be able to evidence noise reports for acoustic testing beyond the grounds of the stadium, which shows them to comply with the guides set by the Code of Practice, the club may be in a better position to apply for a further 2 events a year. And that is what we would like you to consider today. And to close, the club has successfully hosted 11 behind closed doors Super League games, working closely with our governing body, the Rugby Football League, where we create a biosecure environment for all playing, coaching and venue staff. The stadium management operated under the requirements contained within the General Safety Certificate, including COVID-19 addendums issued by Leeds City Council on the 15th of July. The safety and the well-being of all that visit Emerald Headingley is of paramount importance to us, and we totally understand the impact of COVID-19, and our priority will always be public health. We currently have DCMS approval to host a pilot event with 1,000 spectators on the 30th of September. We are hopeful this pilot will be equally successful as against held behind closed doors. And unless advised otherwise by the local authorities, we will continue to plan the staging of this pilot on the basis that is a key step in return of crowds and hopefully larger crowds when it is safe to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue, for that detailed presentation. I will now ask the subcommittee if they've got any questions.
Yes, please.
Yes, Councillor Buckley.
I had my hand up, but I don't think you saw it.
I just saw it now, thanks.
Okay. Yes, I've just got 2 or 3, please, if I can.
Yeah.
And perhaps I can just ask them all at once, and Sue might be able to just make a note and come back to me. That's probably the easiest way. I just wanted to clarify that the potential total of 4 events would or would not only take up 2 weekends. So could it be 4 weekends or 3 weekends, or would it just be 2 weekends? That's the first question. And I have some knowledge of this complex at Headingley, because I'm not a rugby league man, but I am a cricket man. So I am familiar with the whole thing. And am I right in thinking that all the events would only take place on the rugby ground? Because when I initially read the papers and looked at Western Terrace, that's the old name, isn't it, for the cricket western side? So that's the second question. And then would all the events take place in the summer months, let's say between May and September inclusive? I have got a couple of others, but perhaps if I can leave those with you, and then I could come back later on.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Yes, to answer all your questions, the first question, yes, the events would be over 2 weekends. We have actually applied for the events to actually be staged over 2 weekends. And yes, you're right again, it would be during the summer months, and it would only be when we obviously aren't playing rugby league. So this does actually limit how many events can be staged. And the more successful we are as a rugby team, depends on how many concerts we can actually host. And to answer your second question, yes, it would just be on the rugby ground. So the Western Terrace that I refer to is the Western Terrace that butts onto the back of the turnways where Mr. Parr lives. Does that answer your question?
You're muted, Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thanks. That's fine for now. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Latty, you got any questions?
No, not at this time. I think the questions, Councillor Buckley's probably the same questions. Thank you.
All right. So I take it we haven't got any further questions. Right.
I've got a couple, Chair, if I can.
Yes, please. Go on, Councillor Buckley.
I think I heard Sue say that the dates will be published 90 days in advance. And if you could just confirm that I heard that right. In other words, how much notice would the residents have that weekend X would be the affected weekend, X and Y, I suppose. And I think actually that is probably all I wanted to ask.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Do you want to reply to that?
Yeah, it's actually 90 days is the least amount of time we would have to produce the management plan. So we actually would probably have an artist and put tickets on sale a lot, previous to that 90 days. Just to give you an example, that before COVID-19, we were looking for an artist for this summer, for next summer. And those tickets would probably have gone on sale November, December time when our rugby fixtures had been agreed with the RFL. So in actual fact, we would probably be putting tickets for sale in line with, say, Christmas time for a summer event. So it'd be a lot greater than 90 days.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Buckley?
Yes, thank you. That's fine.
All right, thank you. So I've got one more question to ask you. In terms of the noise nuisance and residents that are that live close by, in terms of distance, how close will you say a resident needs to live to be able to hear the music playing from your stadium?
Sorry, can you be a little bit clear with your question?
Right, so from your application, in terms of your testing and all you have done in terms of reducing the noise, there was a place where you said that's been tested and it's not going to be heard, people who live really close by. So in terms of distance, how close do they need to be able to hear the music?
So the acceptable levels were monitored in various points surrounding the stadium. One on St Michael's Lane, just as the first row of houses, you know, that butt up to the highway. Again in the turnways where Richard lives, a little bit further away in Grey Shields, and also at Broomfields, yeah, which is just further over from our Western Terrace, just adjacent to. Off St Michael's Lane, adjacent as you're going up to North Lane in Headingley. Yeah. So, but you will hear the noise. It's the acceptable levels of noise that are being monitored, and that's what's all contained within our reports.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? No? Okay. The subcommittee will now move into a private session to deliberate on the application and all we've heard. Could I ask that all parties...
Sorry, Chair, we've got to hear from Mr. Parr.
Oh, sorry, just bear with me.
Okay.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Please, over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll try and keep this relatively short because I know nobody's got that much time. Just a couple of quick points to start off with. I know a lot of other residents would have loved to come. They just couldn't make the rescheduled timing. Also, I'd like to point out that at least my representation also, and I know some of the other residents were concerned on the basis of protecting children from harm, which I think is really important to take into consideration as part of this application. I'm all for the Leeds protecting children efforts, Leeds child-friendly city, and I really think that in its current form, this application is harmful for children, not supporting the role of kids in Leeds, which is a real shame because, as I'm sure everyone knows, Headingley is starting to attract a lot more families back to Leeds, well, back to Headingley, and especially around the turnways and the Broomfields and really all around the stadium. And I think that's only something everyone would want to encourage going forward. Just a couple of, well, other reasons why I think this is so important. I mean, like I said, the stadium is, because of the way things have happened, slap bang in the middle of a family area. You know, kids, lots of kids will walk past the stadium both ways to get to the local school. Really, the stadium is encircled by children and families. I myself, I'm right behind where the proposed new music stand might be, or where the performers would dance and that kind of thing. Probably about 20 meters behind that. And, you know, within a few meters of me, I know there's at least 2 or 3 families with kids as well. My kids are 8 months and 3 years old, but they go to bed at between 6:30 and 7 for context. Soon they'll be going to school. So I think this underlines how important it is that the evidence is there and that there's a high burden of proof for how this, what happens going forward. Especially, and sorry if I'm wrong, but if this license is passed in its current form, then that's kind of it for a while. I'm not aware of any reviewing mechanisms or if this is time limited. So it's really important that we get this right. I really hope you'd agree. Just on that first point around the evidence for this being acceptable and not causing a nuisance and not causing harm to children. Well, I mean, as I understand it, a lot of the evidence that the stadium are presenting comes from the last 2 events that were held since 2019. And I would suggest that these are really poor comparators to what we're looking at now. You know, the license was for 10,000 people. The sound requirements for 10,000 people are completely different than for 20,000 people at full capacity. And, you know, this isn't going to be like a rugby match. These are people standing on the, well, lots of young people, I presume, standing on the pitch itself. The stage location will be completely different. The stage location, as I understand it, and is going to be very close to my house on near the one end of the pitch. So the direction of music is likely to be very different. You know, the kind of music that could be played at these concerts, which will last, you know, 3 hours at a time. I'm sure we've all been to music concerts with pop artists and things like that. You know, we're talking about quite bassy, loud, non-stop music. It's really important we get this right, because as everyone knows, bass music can be heard a lot further away than other kinds of music. And, you know, the events that were held over since 2009 really weren't that kind of music. It's a bit more of a sort of family-friendly affair, I would suggest. So I really don't think that what we've seen so far is enough to justify, and I know my neighbours completely agree with this, the kind of very significant expansion of events, timings and numbers of people, and completely different context of shows that is proposed here. It's really very worrying, actually, that we could have a, you know, if this goes the wrong way, you know, the stadium would be able to move forward with that without review, so to speak. Just generally, though, with the proposal, we also have some real significance and concerns. So, and again, if I have got any of this wrong, please do say, but the current proposal would allow music to continue until 11 p.m. at night. Again, just for context, most kids will go to sleep around 7 in the evening. Now that's when the music stops. We're then talking about thousands of probably young kids and teenagers, kids in their 20s, then leaving the venue. Then there's the pack up, potentially, of the stage and the equipment. Right behind my house, there's an area where currently a lot of the Sky buses and that kind of thing do their work after the games, and they tend to leave and continue working for at least an hour or so after the games stop. So really, I don't think 11 p.m. doesn't feel like when the music's actually, or when the noise pollution is going to stop. I'd be really surprised if I'm wrong about that. I mean, even then, 11 p.m. is incredibly late. You know, already, you know, rugby matches and other things wake my kids up. Planes wake my kids up. You know, this is really very worrying as a parent of young kids. And, you know, I think that is important context as well. This isn't just 2 weekends, up to 4 events, up to 11 p.m. Once a year. This is in addition to, as already said, very frequent rugby matches, as well as cricket matches. You know, even 60 games a year. That's 60 weekends in theory, where you're being woken up in the evenings where there's lots of people going to and back and forth and lots of associated noise. So it really is a lot. I mean, a rugby match, I can hear it in my front room. I can hear it when I'm trying to get to sleep. And I know it's the same for residents across the area. It's not just the turnways. I've also lived elsewhere, and I know how strongly people feel about this. So I hope that's highlighted kind of where we're coming from in terms of our concerns about this. And I'm really grateful for you taking the time to really give it appropriate scrutiny. So really, I mean, just in summary, I think it's really important that we make sure the burden of proof is right before we give such a massive extension for something which is very different to what's come before. And even within that, I think the proposals are going to be have a huge impact on the local community, which is really sad, because I know the rugby stadium has huge potential to be a kind of a force for good in terms of protecting children from harm, in terms of making Leeds a child-friendly place. But this in its current form really isn't it. And I think there's lots of things that I could suggest in terms of how we could maybe soften this or rethink it. It's probably not the time now, but yeah, I just think there's more thinking to be done if we're really going to protect kids. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parr, for highlighting the reasons for your objection and for your concerns. Members, have you got any questions for Mr. Parr?
Yeah, please, Chair.
Yes, please, go ahead.
It was a question within a comment, really, Chair, if I can. And I've got the greatest sympathy with Mr. Parr and all the residents. The noise of all these things is always very disturbing. The only thing I would just put to him is that he made a comment in which he said, it is not just about this application. Well, actually, Mr. Parr, it is just about this application, because things like aeroplanes flying over and cricket and rugby matches at night have been going on for a very long time. And whilst they may be disruptive, this application is just what it is. It is about this specific thing. So that was just part of my comment, really. And at some point, Mr. Parr might to just respond to that if he chooses.
No, thank you. I do take that point. I think that's really important. And, you know, people who have moved to the area recently, in particular, I'm sure, are aware that they're moving to a sporty area and an area under a flight path. I think people like myself and a lot of long-standing residents certainly didn't kind of sign up for the kind of noise pollution that goes on at the moment. I think everyone will know that there's a new stadium in place, a brand new sound system, which is much louder than anyone could have anticipated previously. That's only just come in. So I think it has been incrementally getting significantly worse and louder, and it's happening at quite a pace as well. You know, this is year on year that people are taking, you know, they're spending a hell of a lot of time responding to these applications and trying to get their voices heard. It feels like we're under siege, to be honest. I just think it's really important that this is done incrementally and really, truly in partnership with the community to offset that damage, because it's, you know, it's not very nice. And of course, we know that the airport is planning to increase the number of nighttime flights and things like that. I appreciate that is not directly linked in with this application. I think it's just context.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parr. Any further questions? Councillor Latty? Yes, Sue, would you like, sorry, Councillor Latty. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Sue, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yeah, I would if I could, please. Yeah, because we work very closely with Richard and a lot of residents in the area. And last February, when we met last, we discussed the event that was hosted on the 21st of September. And I do feel that the residents feel that this isn't a comparable event. However, noise is noise. And if you have a limit on noise, which is, say, 70 decibels, then whether that is coming from a rugby PA, a cheering crowd, a cricket match, AC/DC, Little Mix, or wherever it's coming from, it's 70 decibels. So I just want us all to understand that sound is measured, and we measured it, and we measured it with an independent consultant. I have no way of screwing those figures in any way, shape or form. So noise is measured in decibels, and if anybody wants to look back at those reports, those are the reports that I actually lodged last September, and we've never had any adverse feedback surrounding those reports. So that is my first comment. Richard Parr just mentioned then regarding how the noise level are getting worse and worse, and I feel like the club is tarnished with these kind of comments. And in actual fact, we obviously haven't hosted any rugby games, and the rugby games that we have hosted have been at a very, very low capacity. There's probably been 350 people in here, and the PA system has barely been actually turned on. So I cannot understand why Mr. Power would want to say that noise levels are getting worse and worse, because they certainly aren't. That's actually untrue. With regard to the facing of the stage, we've made it very clear in our application that the Western Terrace is excluded from this application, so that a stage can back onto the Western Terrace. So that means that any sound that does travel, and again, I am not a sound specialist, so have worked very closely with independent sound consultants to understand this so we get it right, that any sound then is projected forwards away from the turnways. And that's why we have actually put the stage in that position. With regards to de-rigging, we will do whatever we can to ensure that de-rigging is undertaken the next day. I think Richard's right in what he's saying. He said that, you know, we're now doubling the application. It's going from 9,999 up to the 19,999. And our first concert, yeah, we didn't hit that 10,000. However, pre-COVID, we were hitting crowds of 15 to 18,000 at every game. And I'll let the subcommittee decide. However, if you've got a group of Little Mix fans coming to a ground, I'm sure they will be less disruptive than a set of rugby league spectators and 20,000 of those leaving the ground. So I think we've just got to work on facts here. We really do. With regards to the cut-off time, 11 p.m, we will do our utmost, but any more noise strategy will include an agenda, will include a playlist, and should any concert be delayed in any way, then anybody who's staged these kinds of shows before will know that what you do is you take out tracks, so you make that event finish on time. And again, we will be complying with that. They're the basic conditions which are in the pro forma that I've already completed. Just to touch on one other point that Richard mentioned, which was the rugby matches and how these go on and on and on. Just so that everybody knows, our rugby games traditionally finish about 9:45 on an evening. It's a family game. And I'd just close on that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue, for that. Any further questions from members?
Yes, Chair, just a brief one.
Yes, go ahead.
Sue mentioned there, made a comment there about de-rigging the next day. I assume that means taking everything down and getting the coaches away and all the rest of it. Is that something which she'd be prepared to volunteer?
Of course, Councillor, yes, of course.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite catch.
She said yes. You okay with that? Okay, any further questions? Right, to our applicant and objectors, thank you very much. The subcommittee will now move into a private session to deliberate on the application. Could I ask that all parties, including the applicant and their representative and the licensing officer, remain available should the subcommittee have any additional questions? If there are any additional questions, you will be invited back into the meeting by the clerk. So we're just going to disappear for a few minutes and we will be right back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So members, legal officer and clerk will now move into a breakout room, and it could be up to about 10 minutes. So if you just bear with us for a while, thank you.
Right, I'm back.
Yep, we are back now.
We're back.
Are we all back in now? Councillor Buckley's not back in yet.
Does he know he's answering that question?
Please, can you double check with Councillor Buckley, please? In case he pressed the leave button instead of return, instead of leave room. Matthew, do we know if we have anyone helping with the back office? To see if we can get hold of Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'm just trying to make contact with him now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have we lost him?
I think so. Yeah, he's not on there. Sorry about that, everyone. We will be right back. We're just trying to get hold of one more member. Thanks. Yay, you're back now, Councillor Buckley. Thanks for coming back.
I am.
We lost you for a few minutes.
I have returned.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming back. We've just got further questions to ask you, Sue, if that's all right. And I will start with Councillor Latti.
I just want to ask the question whether the stewards that you've got and the security people, if these are able to marshal people leaving the ground after the concert.
Yeah, we operate in that way as people egress the stadium. It is part of our safety certificate that we monitor what we call Zone X, which is the footprint and the perimeter surrounding the stadium.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I think as Councillor Latti said, we are slightly concerned about the noise levels at the end of the event. Can the de-rigging, as Sue said earlier, all be left until the following morning, or as a condition of the host, if you like? Or if that cannot be the case, can it happen earlier than the end of the, in other words, can the music be actually finished earlier to allow any necessary de-rigging that night?
Thank you. We've set the 11 p.m. because we felt that was a good time for a concert to actually end. Without an artist, it's quite difficult to actually specify what time we would want it to end. But say, for instance, when we were looking at the likes of Little Mix, that concert was actually finishing a lot earlier than 11 o'clock. So it would be quite difficult to attract the right artist. It would obviously depend on the audience that we'd want to attract. So it's a difficult question to answer with regards to the timings, but we do feel 11 o'clock is the timing we want to keep to. However, if with regards to DRIG, if that had to be the following working day or following day, then that is something that we would agree to, you know, so that we'd have, it's like a rugby match now, the game will finish at 9:45. But just to allay any fears, the actual egress from the stadium is around 8 minutes. That's actually for between 15 and 18,000 people to leave the stadium. It is a very quick process. It's not, people don't linger.
Okay. Thank you very much. And one more question from experience. How long does it take for them to pack up their equipment from when they finish?
Again, it's quite a difficult question because say, for instance, we had an event on a Friday night and a Saturday, we wouldn't be moving anything on the Friday night because there'd be an event on the Saturday. So then the Saturday evening, if we were taking out the lights, the staging, it would really depend on what type of artist. So again, if it was somebody who had very little lighting, a small stage, it would be a lot less than a larger band. But to give you an indication, the Leslie Garrett concert, it's quite quick actually, the DRIG for that. They took out some of the lighting on the evening, but the cut off was adhered to. So we cut off at 11 o'clock and we down tooled and left. And then it was actually followed up the next day. We obviously have to take into consideration that you can't actually DRIG while people are in the ground. So it's quite normal for DRIG to be the next day. If you can imagine that staging and lighting, quite heavy equipment, will all be loaded onto quite large vehicles. Well, it's clearly not safe for large vehicles to be moving around our car parks and on St Michael's Lane while the spectators are still in the ground. So it's the difficult questions to answer. It will very much depend on the artist, but we can definitely, you know, that's something that we can do. We can DRIG the next day.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, if I may, I think Ms. Ward, that members were concerned about what you actually mean in terms of the DRIGGing, or would you be including in that the property of the artists themselves, or are you just talking about the stadium's own property and equipment?
We wouldn't DRIG anything from the stadium, anything that was permanent. But just to be mindful again that when we have hosted a concert previously, we don't use the in-house PA system or lighting generally. This is, all the equipment is brought in. So when there's been reference previously to the PA and the noise, well, it's a different set of equipment. It's concert level equipment. So our lighting, our floodlights are obviously very different from what an artiste uses.
So if you had a performer who finished at 11 p.m. But then had a concert the following day, would you be saying that their sort of road crew wouldn't be able to remove any of their equipment until the following day as well?
Well, we wouldn't need to move it because we'll be using it the following day.
Well, on the second day then, if there's two concerts, if that artist had a gig somewhere else in the country and wanted to remove their equipment that evening, I think that's the concern of members. Would you be able to control that?
Yeah, because that would be part of any agreement that we have with that artiste. That is something that would be built into their contract and probably a restriction. So what would
right, I think that's the question that members wanted you to clarify.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, but that would just depend on what you agreed as part of the hire agreement.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue, for your comments to the questions. Any further questions?
Not from me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Latty.
Not from me, no, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and for your patience. Just before I end, could I kindly ask members and the legal team officers to please remain in the meeting when we are finished. Thank you once again for all your attendance. That concludes the business for today. You will be informed of the decision within 5 working days. So thank you for your time and wishing you all a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.